Hello, everybody. This is Jennifer Jennings, your intuitive astrologer in the hills of Tennessee. Thank you so much for joining me again today. The subject of the week is Dr. Franz Mesmer or Dr. Franz Mesmer, and we are going to take a look at his birth chart, being that it is Telepathic Tuesday today. So I'm going to read the archetypal energies of Dr. Mesmer, and we are going to decide if what he was working on with the animal magnetism holds any fluid, holds any magnetism. We need to connect with his natal chart to find out exactly, was he a charlatan? Was he a man of dignity? Who was Dr. Mesmer on a spiritual level? Let's take a look. All right, so we have Dr. Mesmer's natal chart pulled up, and as you can see, he rises in Cancer. His moon is in Aquarius. His fortune or his mark, the way that we meet the mark, the joy, is in the ninth house here in Pisces. What I find interesting right off the get is that he has Zeus here in the eighth house of Pisces. And I will get back to Zeus here in just a few minutes, but let's start with the 12th house. He has Neptune here in Gemini. His 12th house is Gemini, so the undoing is in Gemini. There is something hidden here in the 12th house. It brings wisdom, and there is a 0-0 in the sign of Cancer, and this is where I call this a doorway. I call this a doorway. Astrologers have their own way of interpreting energies, and mine is a little different, I'm sure, than other astrologers, but this is what I call a doorway. And once our vertex is open, once this doorway opens, we are able to access these other doorways, and these are our doorways to the spiritual world. And the fact that he has 0-0, the fact that he has a 0-0 in Hygeia, 0-0 in the midheaven, that tells me, oh gosh, Pallas is 0-0. So this tells me that there's a lot of endings and beginnings, lots of shakeups that are happening, lots of things that are going on. And so, yes, I can definitely see already that Dr. Mesmer has the ability to definitely be futuristic with his receptivity. And it would be about home because he rises in Cancer. So there's a loyalty that we have with home, with the receptivity of the moon, because Cancer rules this fourth house. This is where he has Pluto. So there is a death, rebirth, regeneration that is constantly taking place in the sign of Libra with Pluto here in the fourth house of home. And the first house, he has Vesta. This is where he would want to write. He would want attention to his writings. He would want attention to his soul work. And it would also, because it's in Leo, it would also create soul work that did not last with his relationships. And these 0-0s would have definitely created a lot of different people coming into his life. Nothing in the second house. Will move on. The third house is in Virgo, and he has the weight of Hades. So the weight of the health, his higher mind, this is where Mercury rules this third house in Gemini. And that is what his 12th house is. This is also his 11th house, where his anti-vertex, his sun, Astria. So yeah, I can see that he is these short travels with health. There is a weight of people's health here in the higher mind. And with the 0-0 Libra vernal point here, this would create beginnings and endings with this Hades energy, with the weight of Hades with people's health. And then the low point is also in Libra at 0042. His midheaven in Aries, the highest point is also, they're going to be the same degree, of course, 0042. So there's a lot of endings and beginnings that are happening. And he has a lot of low points. He has a lot of high points. He would have had early childhood traumas. And when he was, I believe he was around 12 or 13 when he was sent off to study, because the plan was for him to be a bishop or a pope. I can't remember. I'll have to study back up on him, and I will by Friday, definitely, because I want to give you more facts on Friday. Tomorrow on Wednesday, I want to do the weirdness. It'll be Weird Wednesday about Dr. Mesmer and the things that people thought were weird. So the Weird Wednesday, you'll have to stay tuned for that tomorrow. The North Node he has in Scorpio. Scorpio rules this 8th house. This is about death, rebirth, regeneration, with Pluto being the ruler. And there was discord. There was discord. And the medicine is these being conjunct, this medicine with Cupid and with his relationships with his lovers. It would have been a more of, Cupid is love and all that, but it also brings a poison with medicine. And so there would have been a discord with the traditional medicine with Dr. Mesmer. This is where he would have had to, this North Node in Scorpio here in the 5th house, this is where he would have used his creativity to create his own destiny. The discord here with Eris is a competitive, this is a competition with the traditional medicine. And he would have been a teacher who liked to travel. He would have traveled far and wide. Jupiter rules this 9th house up here. And so they are complementary. As you can see, there's a trine that's going up, grand trine. I'm not going to get into all those, but it definitely just beginnings and endings all the time. And so meeting different people, he would have loved to have tested these skills, what his ideas were. He would have loved to have tested them out. There's a creative expression, this teaching creativity, and to understand the consciousness and this fast moving energy of the higher consciousness as the sun rules this house. So the fire, there's this water, even though this house is ruled by Pluto, it's ruled by Scorpio. It's about death. It's about rebirth and understanding how to heal and how to prevent the sickness that causes death. And that's what he would have wanted to learn. That's what he would have wanted to teach. And that's what he did teach. Being a physician, this creativity would have been an intense experience when he travels. So the traveling when he was younger, this would have given him intense experiences. It also would have given him a burden with dark emotions and shaken him up. So I'm sure that there was some type of sexuality. I mean, think about it. You're going, he went into a young age and he's around men who are abstinent from sex. And back in this time, in the 1700s, the early 1700s, homosexuality was still not, it was frowned upon. This is what I feel with this dark energy with Uranus, this higher gnosis of the magnetic field. There definitely would have been a dark side to his nature. Unconventional hobbies, unconventional children, unconventional the way that he created. with this house that is ruled by the sun. This everyday Virgo house, he's got Selena, Kronos, this doorway, the equatorial descent, Sears, and the co-descendant in Capricorn. So even though this sixth house is ruled by Sagittarius, he has some placements that are in Capricorn. There is a mastery here with health. Again, traveling far and wide to teach, to learn. And this devouring energy of Kronos would have given him an ability to higher learning and to devour other people with the things that he was learning, the things that he wanted to teach. This is where he would have shared his work with other people about God, about the bigger truths, the higher truths. And Selena in Sagittarius is going to give him a connection with the higher state of awareness. He would have to be careful of an ego for sure. It would have definitely been a spiritual journey that he was taking with his studies. The way that he nurtured himself and other people, he would have mastered that. He would have wanted to master how he nurtured himself and giving to other people. Palace here at a 0, in the seventh house, Mars and the moon being conjunct at 1 degree, these would have went hand in hand in his everyday life with relationships. His partner would have been older, original, and his receptivity was visionary. It was for the future. So when I say in other videos that the past prepares us for the future, that is what his work did. That is what his work did, even though it warred with his relationships with other people. You know, people say, well, you know, he was just before his time. No, that's not true. He was for the right time. And those studies prepared us for the future, which I will get into more on Friday. But Pallas Athena, here in Aquarius, is definitely a humanitarian, giving wake-up calls, just jolts and shakeups all the time to his relationships, to his partnerships, the people that he worked with. He was constantly striving for an intellectual pursuit, and Pallas brings wake-up calls. It is almost like the higher octave of Uranus. There is an electric magnetism that comes with Pallas. And he would have warred with these future visions with other people and the way that he saw himself. This would have given him a rebellion, Mars, but it also would have given him a strong drive to this receptivity, this medium of Aquarius, where he would have had these visions with the moon here. He may have viewed his mother as emotionally erratic. He would have definitely been more secure with the intellect rather than the emotions. But he would have also been able to, like I said, have these visions of how to heal in a futuristic manner. We've got trans Pluto and Vulcanus and Juno and Zeus here in the 8th house. This is a Pluto house. This is the house of death, rebirth, and regeneration. And these relationships, this psychic, intuitive house with Zeus here in Pisces is definitely why he wanted to work with magnetism, because Zeus is the magnetic field of the human being. Sharing resources, being a leader with his partnerships, with his relationships is definitely seen here. And letting go and just being at one with this higher education and really giving his life to God and the work that he was here to do, again, prepares us for today. 300 years later, and I'm talking about him. Here's the duality. This is where he would have war with the dualism of life and death, of good and evil, God and Satan, the yin and the yang that are actually the same. His greatest fortune, his greatest achievement is to find truth. And in his endeavors, in his travels, there would have been death, there would have been beginnings and endings with people's health, for sure. The health aspect is not something that he could have strayed from. He was forced into that doctrine for people's health and seeing how health fit into the bigger picture of things. Understanding the head, the cranial nerves, the brain. And in those times, I'm not sure if he would have understood the brain like we understand it today. Being assertive, having power, having a public lifestyle is definitely seen here with the Aries 00 midheaven. Venus also in Aries. This is the 10th house. So there's a strong initiating energy that is constantly taking place, constant in his life, every day, always changing. Perfectionism in his career, loving what he does, always being obsessed with this career with Apollo, definitely a doctor. When he matured, got a little older, and that's when he would have bestowed a thesis for the material wealth with this doctrine of health, communications, education, and they are conjunct. They are side by side conjunct. And this Sabian symbol is about the cranial nerves. You can't make it up. You just can't make it up. Public failure, that would have been his biggest fear. It would have come from his father, from the father figures. There was an insecurity, and he would have had to have matured to get respect. In time, he would have gotten respect with his values that rule this second house. Taurus rules this second house. May have been slow, but persistence wins the day. He would have definitely wanted to share his thoughts. He's been here. He's been here in this Aquarian house where his values were. It's where his wound is in Taurus, the monetary value of being a visionary. He was definitely destined to have a lot of changes. And that is also seen here with this South Node here in the 11th house with groups. Solitude would have been a great way to understand and gain wisdom. His crisis of values were seen with the groups. Today, he is known as a pseudoscientist, a pseudo doctor, not taken seriously at all, and seen as someone who was not serious and that took advantage of people. That is where his wound is how the group, his peers, saw him. But this is also where he would have had to relied on his body to be this wounded healer. And God's will is being done and shining on his intellect, this higher mind of Mercury, with the futuristic receptivity of the moon. Very sociable, scattered, very scattered. With the sun here in the 11th house, he would have been sociable. He would have been sociable, and he would have had the sun shining on him, but it was also wounding him as well. And people with the sign of Gemini would have grounded him and helped him with the trauma, with the early trauma of childhood, because he did leave home pretty early. He would have had difficulty leaving groups well after he should have already left. The undercurrents of the world, the undercurrents of his psyche here in the 12th house of undoing is what he had a hard time with, because the intuition that he was receiving was from the unconscious, from this unconscious doorway that was, I'm sure, wide open for him. So the intuition that he was using with the magnetism is what is preparing us to understand magnetism and the human body on a deeper level. So tomorrow is Weird Wednesday, and I'm going to talk about the weirdness of Dr. Mesmer and how he was a wounded healer in groups, but it's also where his wound is with groups, and this intellectual insecurity of using his intuition. But as you can see, these 0 zeros in his chart are a lot of new beginnings, a lot of endings, and it had to do with health and higher education and this doctorate degree. But this is where he found joy. All right, so tomorrow we are going to talk about the weirdness of Dr. Mesmer. So be sure and join me tomorrow, and by Friday, we're going to decide whether or not his works hold any validity in today's society and what we can learn from people like Dr. Mesmer. All right, so join me tomorrow.